Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And it's Jeremy from Tested.
Welcome to the second episode of Projections, our show about virtual reality, augmented reality, and all these emerging technologies that are going to put us in far out spaces.
Can't wait.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this space this week because it's GDC, the Game Developers Conference. And while it's a full week of developers coming and showing off new games and maybe some new hardware, we wanted to first start off by talking about an event we went to on Monday.
Yeah, Oculus does their own event at GDC, which is great. There's just like this one building they take over at the Europe Windows Center, one big room where they invite the press in to check out a bunch of new games, most of which have been unannounced up until that day.
Yeah, it really is showing that their investment in content in VR is ongoing.
Yeah.
They've spent over hundreds of millions of dollars in Oculus Studios, and we expected to see games that we saw at OC3, like Lone Echo or maybe Wilson's Heart, but they came out and surprised us with some new announcements for AAA titles. What were some of the things that you liked?
Well, one game I just want to throw out at the beginning is we haven't seen Gear VR games in a while because we've been so focused on the hardcore Rift and Vive and PSVR. But so we did get to see some Gear VR games. One that I actually thought was pretty awesome called Augmented Empire. It's just a good mechanic. It's like an XCOM style game. But it's not quite in the sci-fi vein. I don't know. It seems like you're in this mystical London. But it's awesome. It's well voice acted. It's got good graphics. It's got a nice mechanic where you're tapping on this meter to accomplish different tasks. Interesting game if you are a Gear VR user. Yeah,
and it's a game that surprisingly worked well with just rotational head tracking and one-button action, whether it's tapping or using the new controller that Samsung announced at Mobile World Congress. This game is being developed by the developers of Esper, which are one of the first Gear VR games out there. But on the Rift side, on the high-end VR side, there was one game I want to give a shout-out to is From Other Suns, from Gunfire Games, developers of Chronos.
I think of all the games we saw, this is the one that I kept going back to in my mind. I kept thinking, well, what about this? Well, what about this? It's an interesting game. I mean, it's a multiplayer game optionally, or you can play single player, which is you need that right now in VR, I feel like right now. But you put together a match of 3 players, and you are aboard a spaceship, and you can all have different jobs.
Right, it's like Mass Effect, but in a roguelike. And a lot of this game is procedurally generated. So the away missions, the instances, but the fact that you can get 3 people together to cooperate on the running of a spaceship or to go on these away missions that are combat-based or puzzle-based, I thought was really interesting. And like you said, the whole day we kept on going back to that booth to chat with the developer and to learn more about this game because it really feels like the game I want to play in VR.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, all the away missions, I think, are going to be aboard other spaceships. So it's still going to be that same kind of environment. But the roguelike aspect of it, which means permanent death and randomly generated levels, means a lot of replayability. And they compare it to FTL, which is a game I've never won, right? Like it's a difficult game. They expect it to be that kind of difficulty, but you keep going back, ramp up your own abilities, and a lot of potential.
And then we also saw Brass Tactics, which is a full-blown RTS in VR, and the way the developer has laid out the map is like basically a miniature, like a giant Warhammer miniature that fills up your entire room.
Giant miniature.
A giant miniatures table that you can navigate and get up close and see your little figures in your army and then navigate them around. I thought the whole moving around the map mechanic was really interesting.
You're much better at RTS games than I am. I mean, just about anybody is actually. But I like the ability to move around that map. You're grabbing the world and you're throwing it, and it's like there's physics where it continues to move, and then you get to your around the world. You can see where your opponent is too, where their actual goggles and touch controllers are in the world. So unlike a regular RTS, you can see where they're focusing, and you can focus your attention somewhere else. Interesting.
Yeah, so games like From Other Suns and Brass Tactics, new games that were announced at this event, really showing this kind of depth that Oculus wants to showcase this year. And maybe the best example of that is Artica 1, which is a game that was first announced at OC3, but we got to play it here. And it's a game that's been in development for 2.5 years now, and it's by 4A, the makers of the Metro games. It's one of the most beautiful VR games I've seen, a shooter.
Yeah, it's an interesting locomotion mechanic in this game where you are basically in a body, and you can only teleport to very specific nodes in the world. And those are represented by these ghost characters that you see. And if you look at them and then you press a button, you teleport there. Now that allows them to customize each of those nodes in very specific ways and then create the gameplay around those areas rather than allowing you to run around the world. It's an interesting way to design a game. I mean, a lot of people who play VR are going to want that free locomotion. On the other hand, that requires a different approach to the game design. So I would give these guys a chance. This game is probably the best looking game that I've seen in VR. It's really beautiful.
And what we're finding out is that developers, even experienced developers, are still figuring out the mechanics of VR, what works, what might not work, even as they've been working on a single game for over 2 years. And one of the best things we were able to do at an event like this was chat with those developers. So you'll be seeing those interviews in future episodes of Projections, where we get to really sit down and pick their brains about the process of designing a VR game. But perhaps the main event for this check-in with Oculus was our biannual check-in with Nate Mitchell, who used to be the VP of product of Oculus, and now he's the head of Rift, I believe. And we were able to sit down with Nate and pick his brain about what's been going on with the Oculus platform. Check it out. Nate, it's great to chat with you at GDC now. I was going to say OC3, but that was a while ago.
It was a while back.
Yeah, and a lot of things have changed. You guys have launched Touch since then.
Yep.
Coming into GDC, Oculus said that the focus in this year was going to be depth, and to us that meant not only more games, but maybe games that you can spend, experiences that you can spend longer time in VR. Is that
Absolutely.
the focus? What do you, for 2017, what is the mission of Oculus?
So I would say actually our mission is really bringing more people into VR, getting as many people as possible into VR as possible. On Gear VR, I think that's going really, really well. I mean, Samsung just announced some new things at MWC, including the new controller for Gear VR. On the Rift side, we have a lot in terms of content, and then the big news here at GDC is obviously that we're actually lowering the price of Rift and Touch together from $799 to $599. So really great AAA content coming to the platform this year, an incredible lineup sort of that demonstrates the investment we're making in the ecosystem, and then also just the caliber of developers involved. And then this price drop that we think is going to bring a lot more people into VR, which is awesome for both people who love VR and are excited for VR, but also for developers who want the biggest audience to sell into.
So to clarify, the price drop is across both the SKUs you have out now. The Rift headset itself is getting $100 off, and the Touch controllers also $100 off. Why are those still being sold separately? Going forward, isn't it in your best interest to make sure new adopters have both?
So actually, we absolutely agree with that sentiment. We actually want to get as many people the Touch controllers as possible. So fully agree. This was sort of the fastest path to realizing, I mean, once we'd had these savings, we knew we were going to drop the price. And we've been planning this for a while. We thought the fastest way to get it done, given all the existing inventory that's out there and everything else, was really just to lower the price on the individual SKUs that are out there. And these are going to be available either bundled on Oculus.com or at any retailer at these new prices starting on Wednesday, March 1st. In the future, we may bundle things a little bit differently, have everything potentially in one box, but nothing to update you on quite yet on that front.
Is there any information you can share about the attach rates as Touch came out? What percentage of Rift owners, existing Rift owners, jumped on to Touch?
I don't think we can share any. I don't think we've shared anything in terms of the attach rate. What I can say is the attach rate is very, very good. And what we want to get to is a place where the vast majority of Rift owners have Touch. I think what I can say is this: in terms of accessory adoption, generally folks aim at sort of the low, or even a very successful game is 25, 30%, and that's for some of the most successful games or accessories of all time. Right? I think people generally reference like Super Mario 64 as having like a 30% attach rate, and like that was like one of the best of all time. For us, it's been far, far and above that. So we're really, really excited at the enthusiasm that we've seen from the community. And just like you said, for us, we want to get Touch in the hands of as many Rift users as possible. And this new $99 price really is going to further that.
It seems to be Oculus and Facebook's stance that VR is ready for the mainstream, even the high-end version of VR. A lot of the people, the price point going down is you want to get in more hands of as many people as possible.
For sure.
A lot of the other people working on VR and high-end VR, maybe they feel like VR, it needs to
it's going to be in the high end. It's going to necessitate getting these high end screens and experimental hardware. It's going to be more like niche PC gaming. What is your stance on where do you think VR is going to be? Where is it now, and where it might be at the end of the year?
So we've always said VR is a long-term initiative, right? I think we said that even in the very early days of the Kickstarter, but all the way through joining Facebook and everything else. We've always tried to set the expectation that this is a long-term play, and VR as a computing platform is going to take time, but really it's advancements, right? It's advancements in hardware, in software, in ergonomics, optics, displays, everything. We still sort of say it's still the very early days of VR, right? We often joke that sort of Rift in many ways was like sort of the Apple II, and we're still far away from that iPhone moment where VR, really truly feels like, hey, this is a mainstream, ubiquitous device where everyone has a VR device in their pocket, and maybe we're even having this conversation in VR rather than in person at GDC. Our perspective with Rift is that actually VR has an incredible amount to offer today. Whether it's in games or video or some of the really exciting stuff happening in education, or creative tools, especially, we've really been impressed with the creations coming out of like the Medium community, for example, and the Quill community. So VR is starting to transform jobs across the board. And I think Rift and Gear are really setting the bar in terms of the experience that it can offer. I do agree that actually entertainment is going to continue to be the focus for VR over the next few years, and you see us driving at that in a really big way. A lot of the Rift content that we're investing in is very gaming focused. We're really excited about the possibilities there and sort of the reception, but also just the experience, the raw experience is pretty incredible.
You guys have obviously spent a lot of money investing in content. The games you guys are showing off here, the games you guys have shown off in the past couple of years. It's hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yes, but I do think that's going to continue to evolve. And so VR, it's going to start to, and I think it's already doing this, it's starting to change the way we do our jobs every day, and it depends on what vertical you're in or what job you're in, but it's going to continue to transform the jobs that we do. I think that's sort of the hallmark of a computing platform. And while we're not there and like, hey, everyone's not using VR for their job every single day, the expectation is that whether it's PC VR, mobile VR, or maybe even standalone VR, that VR is going to continue to assume more and more of a role in everyone's life in a really positive and complementary way.
You guys had some organizational changes
over
the past couple of months. You have a new title.
Yeah.
You're head of Rift now. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How does Facebook split up the responsibilities of the different organizations? How does that all work?
So basically what we did is we reorganized, sort of the natural evolution of the business was reorganized into smaller sort of business units, really focused on one section, one product within the business. So in the past, my role was really overseeing all of product for Oculus. Now I'm actually spending 100% of my time on Rift, which I'm super excited about, really excited to be working super closely with the community and sort of driving forward the feature set that I, as a super passionate Rift user, am sort of dealing with every single day. So we've got a lot planned on that front. We also have a new mobile division, which is actually focused in driving the Gear VR side of the house. The two teams, in many ways, we operate the same way that we've been operating. We sit next to each other every single day. We're working on the same product, and or the same sort of product experience. And when we think about the Oculus experience across multiple devices, our goal is to make that an incredible, delightful, magical experience, regardless of what Oculus device you pick up. So we're committed to driving that forward, and for us, it's really just about being even more efficient and having even more focus on one area to really take those products to that next level.
But from your perspective, do those paths converge? Like, for example, the Santa Cruz prototype, is that under your purview, or is that?
So Santa Cruz actually falls more on the mobile side, and that's because the Santa Cruz prototype had a mobile compute, so it's actually more aligned with the experience that you would have on like a Gear VR today. Let's just say if Santa Cruz was a product right now. For us on the Rift side, we're actually focused more on what's the next iteration of the hardware, the experience that's going to push VR fundamentally forward. And there's a lot that we've been investing in on that front. We actually shared a couple pictures recently of Mark Zuckerberg's trip up to Oculus Research. We have an incredible team sort of dedicated on driving the fundamentals of VR forward and opening up some of these new experience targets that are going to fundamentally change the way people use VR and the experiences you can have. That's all future-facing stuff. We're not ready yet to talk about all of that. But as the Rift team is really focused on driving forward VR as a computing platform, and that's something you're going to see us continue to be committed to and to show a lot of progress on over the next year or 2 years.
And even talking about those photos that Mark Zuckerberg shared, he was using a lot of maybe professional gear in terms of the tracking, but you guys are clearly working on gloves or haptics. And how much of it is in-house developed from the ground up, from the lenses, from the displays, and how much of it is still going to be piggybacked on maybe existing technologies?
So, great question. It's actually a mix. So when we're thinking about development of new products, there's sort of multiple phases of it. And sometimes what we do is we build what we call proof of experiences. And a proof of experience is really about proving out the experience that you can have in a device from sort of going, not to use this word too much, but from a user experience perspective. So it's not worried about the fundamental technology. It's, is this something that we want to deliver to users, that we want users to be sort of like doing or enjoying? And so, in some of those pictures you saw, they're using sort of off-the-shelf technology components, but built into a integrated prototype to actually deliver something that's fundamentally new. And we do that to prove out whether or not, again, to bring that into a product. Now, separately from that, let's say we develop something, we're like, oh my God, this totally transforms the game. We absolutely must deliver this in Santa Cruz or Rift 2 or the next Gear VR. Then we have a team really take that and develop out the core fundamental technologies that are manufacturable, that we can bring to consumers at a price point that's obviously reasonable. And so, so what you saw in some of those pictures, there's a real mix of sort of custom stuff. We're working with display manufacturers, with optics manufacturers around the world to push their roadmaps forward to advance the state of the art. And this is all, again, about our commitment to sort of driving VR forward as a computing platform and also bringing more people into VR. We've talked a lot about content, price. Right. We really believe a bunch of the innovation needs to happen in the hardware and software space to get VR to a form factor where it really is ubiquitous, and advancements in input and everything else. We're pushing forward on all fronts, I think far more so than any other company out there, and we're really proud of that.
Now, a lot of you say your job also is about interfacing with the enthusiast community on the high end, and a lot of that community has been pretty outspoken about some of maybe tracking issues they've had with the hardware. And I know Brendan posted in the Reddit forums, for example, addressing that. What can you talk about that, and where do those issues stem from?
So in 1.11, the Rift 1.11 release, we made a number of tracking changes. So we've gotten a few reports, over the course of a few months in the community of a few issues people were having. And we really focused a lot of time on improving all those what we thought were sort of edge cases. And based on all of our testing, we saw tracking basically improved through all of our tests and simulations for 1.11. So we were really excited to get that out there. So we shipped it out. Little did we know that we sort of unexpectedly degraded tracking for users with what we considered to be unsupported configurations. And just to sort of delineate there, we have a guide that says, hey, for a recommended setup, we recommend your sensors are like this far apart, and this is sort of the placement within the room. And what we found is, users were saying, hey, my tracking quality is worse. We started to dig in with them. Hey, can you send us pictures of your setup, everything else? And we had some pretty wild setups, which was actually really cool from our perspective. I mean, we were excited to see people using Rift in ways maybe we hadn't necessarily expected. But it was definitely a miss on our part to not be testing more of these sort of unique configurations. So we went back and our goal with the most recent release, 1.12, which is actually going to be launching today, was to basically fix all the users where we degraded tracking, totally unexpected and not intentional, but also maintain all the tracking improvements that we'd seen for the majority of users. Because we were looking at the stats for 1.11 and like all of our dashboards are up and to the right in terms of tracking quality, which is exactly what we want to see. But of course, there are some users out there we broke, and that was, again, a big miss. So I think we fixed, we're feeling very good about 1.12. We actually did an early sort of public test channel program where we were able to bring in some of the Reddit users and some of the support users to an early release. They've been giving us feedback with their unique setups. And this is the type of thing where we always have to decide where are we investing our time and energy with the resources we have. In this case, we were focused on nailing and improving the recommended setups within that space. Of course, we never mean to sort of degrade tracking quality for anyone, and I think we're coming to a nice compromise and medium here. But we are committed to continuing to improve tracking and just the overall quality of experience. So when we make a mistake like this, we really appreciate the community's feedback, calling it out, helping us even figure out what is the root issue. And now we've really strengthened the robustness of a lot of the QA and simulation that we're doing around new tracking updates to include more of these unique setups.
Are you finding more people adopting a third tracker, a third camera more than you're expecting?
We are. Actually, one of the challenges we had early on was we actually manufactured a set number of third sensors that's available on the website. And really, like instantly at the launch of Touch, we sold out. And we were like, oh man, we got to build a lot more third sensors fast. Ops team, jamming on that and did an incredible job getting those ready. But we've seen pretty significant adoption from the community bringing a third sensor in. And we are, even though it's still experimental right now, we are driving hard at pulling that experimental tag off of the room scale support over the next few months. We want to improve the setup experience most of all. I think right now we give you some PDFs and we say like, here's kind of what we recommend. We want to smooth that out. We've also been making improvements to tracking quality for third sensor. That's another big thing for us. I think that's actually in a really good place now. But yeah, you're going to see us do even more in this space. We're really committed to making Rift the absolute best experience. And for folks that want to use it in a room scale setup, we want to make sure that's A+ experience.
And I saw you guys put up a series of blog posts about optimal setup configurations, one of which was about USB.
Yeah.
And that's a problem that our users have, just limited resources. I mean, when you're talking about setting up each camera requiring additional USB 3 port, there's a natural limitation to this kind of outside in. Are you guys committed to the outside-in constellation tracking? That's the way?
So I think we're committed to outside-in constellation for Rift. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we're not going to be adding anything, or we don't have any plans to add any accessories that would enable inside-out on Rift today, as of right now. What I can say is this, on USB it's really interesting because the PC space, there's all these different USB chipset manufacturers. They all have different drivers. And when a USB provider or manufacturer or a chipset manufacturer may ship a driver update and may end up breaking Rift, for example, you might have too many USB cables plugged into that port. Suddenly Rift doesn't work. We try to work with the entire industry to make sure all of this stuff is in a great place. It's something that we are partnered with all these different companies on. We have, for example, we do support USB 2, and so you can switch down, which is a good trade-off for some users depending on the USB host you have in your machine. But this is something we're going to continue to drive at, that the whole industry is driving at. And we've been super grateful to our partners thus far on the chipset manufacturing side to really be fixing these issues as they come up. But we definitely haven't solved them all just yet, so this is something we'll still be working on as we go.
From a technical standpoint, does Constellation, that technology, the fundamental technology, allow for more things than just the headset and the touch controllers to be tracked? Is that something you guys are thinking about? There are trackers on the other side.
So we're really excited about the future of Constellation. I think one of the brilliant bits about the architecture is that because it uses many image sensors, basically these image sensors, as hardware continues to advance, we can continue to sort of up the tracking quality very naturally, just with hardware advancements, no software. When we think about the experience we want to bring long-term and sort of the evolution of what VR looks like over the next 5-10 years, we have a lot planned for Constellation. But nothing, again, to share right now. But we're very, very excited for the future in that regard.
Now, I've always asked you about Oculus Home. That was kind of one of your babies in the development of Rift. It's still kind of the same as when you guys launched it last year. But there's touch now. There's smoothing out the carpet's one thing, but when's next big home? Like, what are you guys exploring in that space? How people are just navigating through the content?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. We've been doing a lot on the home front. Some new things for touch, like we launched the avatar system. We have touch interactions there. Really excited about that. We've actually been splitting time, especially before we sort of did the reorganization, a lot on Gear Home as well. So Oculus Home on Gear VR, we launched Rooms, which is a new experience that lets you, regardless of where you are on the platform, instantly meet up, right? So I might be playing Minecraft, you may be playing something else. We're like, hey, let's get together. We can play games, we can connect. That was really a big thing for us. We have big plans for Oculus Home on PC. A lot of stuff that you're gonna see, I think, come to life this year, stuff I'm super excited about. We're not, again, quite ready to talk about them just yet, but whether it's changes to the environment or some big changes to the overall interaction and the way that you interact with the Oculus platform, especially designed for touch, we've got some big ideas here, and we're really excited to be getting ready to roll some stuff out this year, let's say.
And this is GDC, the focus is games.
The focus really right now is games, but we are really committed, and especially me and my new role of head of Rift, we're deeply committed to improving Oculus Home for Rift users. We want that to be the premier destination. When you put on the device, it should be absolutely magical and should get you wherever you want to go instantly. Anyway, for Rift users out there, just get ready. We've got a lot in the pipeline, and we are driving at that super hard.
How far away should we still anticipate games that you guys are funding? Like a lot of things were shown here. You guys have been in development for a year, 2 years. Is that going to be a regular thing?
Yeah. So I think one of the things we're really excited about this year is I think we have a big major title launching on Rift every single month. And that's stuff that we've funded actively. There's far, far more than that, but big blockbuster releases coming almost every single month. So that's really exciting. When you look at the broader ecosystem, the caliber of content that's sort of coming out from developers around the world, again, super, super exciting. We are going to continue to invest in the ecosystem. I mean, it goes back to what I said before, our commitment to really bringing as many people into VR as possible. Our goal is to continue to build out a content library that really appeals to everyone, because that's going to continue to widen the user base and bring more people into VR, which is ultimately good for the ecosystem. So that's our commitment. You're going to see a lot more. Some of the fruits of that labor are here at GDC today. But again, this is only a tiny sliver of the overall offering. It's going to be an incredible year to be a Rift or Touch or Gear user for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Nate. It's great to chat with you.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Great.
Norm.
All right, so a pretty wide-ranging discussion. It's
Good
always
talk.
great to chat with Nate. He's like really likable. But right after the interview, we had a bunch of takeaways. I thought a lot of interesting things came out of that conversation. First of all, of course, the big news dropping today is the price drop.
Yeah.
That's interesting. $200 off the entire package. That's aggressive for Oculus.
Yes, and I think to their credit, they want to get as many people into VR as possible, and that's the way to do it. Price is, I think, the biggest limiting factor right now.
On high-end VR.
You have to get that PC, which is an enormous commitment. Then on top of that, you're spending almost just as much on VR, at least previously, with $800. Now it's $600, all in with the Touch. And if you still want to take that baby step and just do the headset, then that's $500.
I mean, the way they structured this price drop, which Nate said they've been thinking about for a long time, once they had a new head of operations, that they could manufacture more efficiently, the fact that they're dropping $100 off each of the products, the Rift itself and then the touch controllers, tells me this is really to cater to two types of people. One, the people who have bought Rift last year and didn't buy Touch, and maybe there are more people in that bucket than we assume.
They want the attach rate to be great.
They want that attach rate to be great. The fact that Nate compared the attach rate to an accessory or a game doesn't sit well with me, because in our mind, I think Touch isn't an accessory, it's an essential part of the VR experience, the Oculus VR experience.
To us it is, and I've never, when I find out that there's somebody who owns the Rift and doesn't own Touch, I don't understand it, because it does transform the experience. But they made that mistake. They shipped the Rift without the Touch.
Right.
So they made it the accessory.
The other crowd I think they really want to cater to are the PC gamers who haven't adopted VR. I don't think dropping the price from $800 all in to $600 all in for the VR accessories is going to compel someone who doesn't have a gaming PC to build a PC and then buy a headset and buy touch controllers. But I think for a lot of PC gamers who have graphics cards, GTX 970s, GTX 1070s, but haven't bought into VR yet, that's going to maybe compel them to pick this up over like the HTC Vive.
Yeah. One question I had when we first found out about this is, why didn't they just price it at this to begin with? So I asked Nate about that off camera, and they did confirm that they have managed to lower their cost of manufacturing, that their ops guys have been continuing to chip away at the way that they can reduce costs. And so that's their narrative anyway. They are passing those savings on to the consumer, which honestly, it can't be a bad thing. It's a good thing that they're doing this. More people in VR, the better. I wonder what this feels like on the HTC team. Right. Over at Valve on the Vive team. Now, they had sort of parity between the headset and the controllers now at $800. Now the Rift is $200 cheaper. Yeah. And if you want to include the new
the deluxe
Pro
audio
strap for the Vive, which really makes it feel, according to you, much closer to the Rift in terms of comfort. That's a further investment on the Vive side.
Yeah, and HTC made their own announcements this week with regard to pricing. They've priced the Tracker Puck accessory at $100 for consumers and developers, and that's going to be available for pre-order in May, shipping in June. I think that's a little high. I was hoping really for that $50 price point, but the deluxe audio strap that really I think is going to be an essential, at least I feel like an essential ergonomic fit for the HTC Vive, that's also going to be $100, and I think that's actually a good price. For that accessory.
I do too. That's a steal. I'm not as surprised as you are about the $100 puck. These are over $100.
$130.
Right.
Yeah.
And they basically have everything that these have, minus the actual controls. But they can function as a controller.
That's right.
The nice thing about those pucks, though, is that you just have to buy one or two ever, and then they attach to what will be very cheap components.
Hopefully. I mean, if a third-party accessory maker is going to make, a pistol, a sword, a rifle that's going to attach to the HTC Vive Puck, of course, it's going to be easier for their R&D not to have to build in the photodiodes for Steam VR tracking. But they're going to want to sell their accessory for $50, $70, $100. I don't foresee a lot of people making VR accessories in the $20, $30 range. They need their margins as well. Back to the Oculus price announcement, point of clarification for people who bought Touch, I think up to 30 days before this announcement for the price drop, they're going to give them, I think, a $50 credit in the Oculus store.
It's not $200, but it's better than nothing.
It is Touch has only been out for 3 months.
I know.
And it's a $100 price drop, 50% price drop.
Yeah.
Does that tell you that they mispriced Touch last year?
I don't know.
We paid $200 for ours.
I know, but I didn't pay for my Rift because I was a Kickstarter backer, so I could hardly complain.
It's not the same. Most of the consumers out there, the early adopters, we recommended buy Touch, buy Touch, buy Touch.
And I still say it's worth the $200. I think that I don't know. Who knows? I mean, this is a steal at $100 now.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And then back to the point of pricing and maybe what Gabe Newell said. And it's something I tried to allude to in the conversation with Nate. Gabe Newell in that press conference with journalists at Valve HQ, he said the race I'm paraphrasing here, the race to the bottom for pricing is the enemy of innovation, and VR maybe isn't ready to be mainstream in their eyes. They're not trying to make a technology and a product now that's going to be in everyone's home.
I think even in your interview with Nate when you brought up the mainstream, he was a little, he physically implied that it's not ready for the mainstream either. That they're, baby steps all the way too.
So maybe it's maybe more of mainstream for PC gamers.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of PC gamers out there who haven't adopted into VR, at least high-end VR. And they are going two paths here. They are going the mobile side with Gear VR, which that's a separate department from the Rift. And that does seem to be going for a more widespread mainstream appeal in terms of how you consume the content. A lot more people have those Samsung phones than people who have high-end PCs.
A lot of people got Gear VR for free, right? When they bought the new phone last year.
Right, but they also may need to justify to their investors that this VR, it's the old chicken and egg problem. They're paying for games, they're paying for creative software like Medium and Quill to be developed so that they can prove that high-end VR is viable.
I'm glad that you asked how long this runway will last, right?
Yeah.
Because they have put so much money into development and promotion of the Rift, and as we know, they put $250 million in last year. They're going to put another $250 million in going forward. I hope that they get to the point that they need to by the end of that runway, because we're all in on this and we want to see it continue.
And the other thing I took away is that while they have a long roadmap for Rift and Rift 2, which of course hasn't been announced yet.
Yeah, we have a name though.
Yeah, right. He said Rift 2. I'm like, I got to believe that internally it's something that they're actively working on and they're just not ready to show. It makes me feel like the Rift, the headset we bought last year, is going to have a lifespan of 2 to 3 years. And unlike the console generation, where when you buy the next Xbox or the next PlayStation, backward compatibility is always up in the air, a question. With headsets, since it is all essentially PC gaming, getting a new headset later on, as long as the tracking system is the same, as long as the interaction models are essentially the same, improving the optics, improving the screen fidelity, it would still be backward compatible, as logically I would expect it to be.
Well, I mean, the nice thing is it's an accessory for a PC, which is backwards compatible, forwards compatible, but you're constantly maybe upgrading your PC. But that's a big chunk of the equation for VR. So at least once you have that initial investment, it's not as big going forward for every generation.
Yeah, we'd love to know what you think about that conversation, what you could pick apart from Nate's answers. But when we come back, we're going to take a look at a new game, not on Oculus, not on Vive, but on PSVR.
Here we go. These are simple. We got them. Poke in the face. We should split up and not be. Got him. That was nerve-wracking. A giant ball.
Oh, that's Indiana Jones.
Oh. Watch out! Oh, Jeremy, they shot you
From where?
from the left. Holy smokes! Did you get him?
Nope.
Oh, I'm down. I looked the wrong way. I'm gonna teleport behind.
Go alive. Go around him. Come back. Come back. Come back. Come back.
Oh god! Oh god! Swipe! Swords! Yes! Behind you, Jeremy. Oh, my shadow.
So our spotlight this week is on a new game. It's Psychonauts for
Yes.
VR, PSVR.
In the petulant parallelogram, right?
Is that what it's called?
No, the Rhombus of Ruin.
Yes, that's what it is.
It's a PSVR exclusive, at least for the moment. I don't know if it will be going forward, but I got this the day it came out. I'm a big Psychonauts fan. Did you ever happen to play that game?
I did a little bit, but I wasn't as big a fan as you. I know
Well,
the writing, the humor.
I'm not alone there, man.
It's a big announcement for
Yeah.
PSVR. I mean, when we talk about the big pillars for Sony, who announced that they sold almost 1 million headsets, this is going to be a high-profile game for them.
That's right. So it's a $20 game. That's your investment going in, and it's just as a starting point, it's remarkable how much of the Psychonauts vibe they managed to capture. I mean, it is the right voices, it's the right animation, the graphics are perfect. I mean, Psychonauts came out how long ago? Like 15 years ago, and it was so quite a long time has passed. And this is really the first that we've gone back into that world, and it's like it never changed.
Right, and it's how you remember it, maybe not exactly how it actually was.
Yeah, I mean, it's in 3D now. It's in my face. The gameplay, I would say, is a very, very cautious approach to VR. Fair enough. I mean, they want to appeal to the largest possible number of people. It doesn't use motion controllers, which I think on the PSVR might be a good thing.
Because you also have the tracked gamepad.
Well, that's true, but you don't see that in the
even
game
when you're
world.
playing, okay.
No, it's gaze-based. The locomotion is teleport, but I like that they incorporated into the actual gameplay universe. A lot of games try to do that, but often it just seems like an afterthought. This is actually like a psi power. So in Psychonauts, you play a graduate from a psi power summer camp, who's on his way, who's now a Psychonaut, and they're on their way on a spaceship to a destination. And you can teleport into other people's minds.
Oh, okay.
That's how they do that. And so
you're in their head.
yeah. And sometimes you can talk to them when they're in the head, just their subconscious and everything. And it's very funny. Tim Schafer, obviously, the maker of Secret of Monkey Island and Full Throttle, and lots of classic, funny LucasArts games, is behind it. You also have other side powers where you can shoot fire, you can levitate things, you can force push, essentially, and open things, or tap things. So that's almost the click, if there was an analogy to the old point and click. You can look around the world and tap on things, and the voice in your head will say what they think that is, or you can interact with them. And it's largely a puzzle game. There's no locomotion, and I should say I haven't totally finished it. I'm 2 or 3 hours into it. But it is a puzzle game with that kind of teleportation mechanic. And it's not just one environment. You're in this spaceship for the beginning, and then the credit sequence rolls. And actually the beginning is not short. And then, so I was hoping, is this the end of the game? No, it's the intro credits. So then you get into what is this other environment. I won't spoil anything. But they introduce basically like psi power kryptonite. So all these powers that you just learned are then removed. and you then embark on, you need to free a lot of other people, and then they assist you to get your powers back.
It's puzzle based.
All of the game is puzzle based. So you're warping around the room, and I keep doing this like Gear VR, but it's because it's a side power. You're warping around the room into these other people's heads. You're looking for clues around the environment, and then you're using your push ability to engage with the environment and maybe input maybe like a code into a computer or push a button or move things around in the world and solve these puzzles. And it's all done with tongue in cheek. It's a great sense of humor. If you like Psychonauts and you have PSVR, I'd say it's definitely worth your $20. Absolutely.
Now, do you think it's a type of game, because it is first person, that necessitates VR, really takes advantage of the spatial sound or being in someone's head, like what VR as technology has to offer, the gaze-based gameplay, or is it something that you can imagine playing with a gamepad on a TV or even in front of a computer screen?
No, it doesn't necessitate VR. And even some of the games we saw at the Oculus event don't necessitate VR. I mean, that is not something that's required of a VR game, I don't think. But it is a line that I draw as well. No, I could play this with a mouse or with a gamepad, look around in the same kind of way. But it works. It works well in VR. It works even better than some of these games like a Blaze Rush, or where you have a toy set in front of you that becomes like life size. It works better than that because of this part of the story where you are supposed to be in other people's heads. Something about the teleportation and that just blends well in the fiction.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The story and the world of Psychonauts that's the selling factor here. That's what the writing and the humor. It's a place like we haven't revisited in the game space.
I think you're right. I think you're exactly right.
10 to 15 years. And so if you have PS4 and a PSVR, it's a no-brainer buy.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Especially if you're a Psychonauts fan, it's an investment. It's $20. But I just love Double Fine. I want to support them, so I would get this regardless. But yes, I mean, if you're a Psychonauts fan, you have PSVR, you're looking forward perhaps to Psychonauts 2, these are the people that you absolutely need to commit the 5 gigs and the $20 to check this out, because it's a lot of fun, and it's great to be back in that world. That Psychonauts world is one of the most unique games that I've ever played, and if you didn't get a chance to play it, those are also available on I believe on PlayStation. I think if you pre-ordered the game, you even got that for free. I missed out on that. But in any case, yes, it's a great approach to safe VR. You're not going to get motion sick playing this game.
Great. Well, that does it for this second episode of Projections. Like we said, there's a lot more from GDC. We still have to visit the show floor. We have a bunch more meetings set up. LG just announced that they have a prototype for their Steam VR HMD, so we're going to hope to see that when we visit. And we'll have that in future episodes. But if you have games, hardware in VR, AR that you'd like us to check out, please post them in the comments below. But until then, Jeremy and I, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
A giant ball?
Oh, that's Indiana Jones.
Oh.